Well, hello, everybody. This is Tracy from the Enable Market Builder team, and I am here today with a very special Market Builder office hours for you all. And this one is the business of security and how to price your security solutions. And as you can see on your screen, I am joined by two very special guests, both of whom I really enjoy working with and who I adore. And I am absolutely open with my adoration of these two. So as always, a couple of legal slides we have to get through and a couple of things to remember here, folks. Do not mute yourself. Do not place this call on hold. And please send all your questions through the question and answer panel. This is meant to be a very interactive session. So, as you're getting comfortable and getting ready for the day to start, please, with our webinar, that is, please go ahead and get those questions in there. I'll be moderating them on the back end, and I'll be, popping in and asking Chris and Stefanie the questions as we go. So who are our speakers? They really need no introduction because they are so well known in the MSP industry. We're joined by our head nerd, Stefanie Hammond. She's amazing. She is just a wealth of knowledge, loves to help MSPs, and really, really a delight to work with. And Chris Massey. If you haven't spent some time with Chris Massey and talked about your own businesses and how you're building your business, this is your invitation to do so. Join him on a business transformation event or, ask some questions today. So we're going to get started with our first poll. I'm going to launch this poll here. And hi, Stefanie and Chris. It's really great to see you today.
Hey, Tracy. How are you? Yeah.
Really awesome. Great.
Yeah, so the idea with this first poll, and as Tracy said, there's a couple that she's going to be putting up there because we just want to get an idea, like how are you guys pricing your programs today? Like, are you pricing per device? Are you pricing per user? Or are you, I just kind of make up the price at the time of the proposal.
And it's okay. It's anonymous. So
yeah, it's anonymous. You can
be honest.
Yeah,
and say you just make it up like I used to do back in my MSP days.
Well, right around about 14, 15%. Oh, we're up 17% are saying that they kind of make up the price at the time of the proposal. So thank you for being honest with that. So it looks like we're at 80% who have voted so far. We're getting up there.
Yeah, we're get your answers in right now because this poll is about to close.
All right.
Awesome. Let's move to the second one.
Can I tell the results?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it looks like 61% are using per device, 24% are using per user, and 15% are saying that they kind of make it up at the time of proposal. So again, absolutely appreciate that feedback. And then the second poll is, for those that are charging, again, per user, what's your per user price? So is it less than $100 a user? Are we between $100 and $200 a user? Are we greater than $200 a user? Again, I did throw we charge per device, or we struggle with our programs and pricing, and it varies. So a little bit of a repeat from the previous poll, but just for those per user, just curious with what you're charging.
And if you use both a per user and a device price, because we hear that more often than not, just sort of give us a range of where you are on the per user. I think that's what we're really looking for here is we have a magic number that we see the industry should be at. And willing to talk about that a little bit today, but I just sort of want to see where everybody's at. Looks like a good percentage of you are sort of under the $100 per user. And I think there's a caveat to this too, and this may change the way you would have voted. What we're thinking about here, at least when I think about this stuff, is what's the fully burdened, like the fully managed, right? Not just sort of a help desk, because I'm sure some of you have maybe a help desk that you charge per user and you might charge $45, $65 per user. But if you were to charge managed services, right, your servers, your workstations, your Active Directory, all in, what do you charge? Yeah, backup, all that sort of stuff. What's your price point at? And so if you're under 100, you're not charging enough, right, Steph? You're not charging enough. Probably. I'll tell you. I'll tell you right now, folks, and I know sort of the caveat to this one is it depends on what's in the box, right? If that package, if we were saying apples to apples, because Steph just mentioned backup, right? Some of you may charge backup sort of outside of that number. Some of you may charge, servers, right? You might not want to put servers in a per user because it's too hard to figure out. By the way, it's not. You just take your entire cost that it takes to be able to support that infrastructure divided by the number of users. That's your per user cost. And that's where you should be able to charge there. I will tell you that we see anywhere from about 175, and this is from the business transformation side, the folks that come through our benchmark, anywhere from about 175 to 225 for an advanced security sort of like we're doing everything in there. We're doing SOC SIM, we're doing MDR, EDR, we're doing all those sort of things. So that number can get pretty high, and you should feel comfortable charging that number if you are including all those bells and whistles. And that's sort of the idea behind this. Your security offering, what are you charging? That number should be a little bit higher, could be a little bit higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've had office hours and I've had people tell me that they're charging $325, $350, for an advanced security package. So definitely if again, we didn't give you all the details. Yeah. We should probably flesh that question out
sort of intentionally too, though. Like we wanted to sort of see where some of you were. And I think here's the other side. Like the first question that we asked, the per user per device, there is no one way, obviously, to do this. As a matter of fact, there is still a lot that do statement of work. We're gonna put this together, and this is your price per month, and it's different for this deal than it is for this deal. But what I've seen mature MSPs, successful MSPs, do really well is pick one of the two. And there is a definite trend, and per user, Steph and I talk about it all the time in our sessions, but pick one of those two directions to go and stick with it. Sort of figure out what that price point should be. Is it still $250 per server? Is it still $125 per endpoint? What are those things? We know where we are from a user perspective, where most MSPs are from a user perspective. And so that number is becoming a lot easier to sort of compare apples to apples against. So don't be afraid to sort of come up with a standard, right? I think that's always one of the things that Steph and I talk about is come up with a standard way to price and then stick with that. And
that standard way to price will be based on what's your standardized package. Right. And so if you want to go to the next slide, Steve.
While you guys are talking, we're getting some questions coming in from the audience. And one of the questions I want to make sure we get quickly is from Mateus. And he wants to know, which market are we talking about here when it comes to pricing? Are we talking about the US or is this global? How do we align that?
Yeah, I tell you what, I know there's this impression that you can't charge what you can charge in the US over in Europe or in Australia or in Asia Pac. What I'll tell you from the benchmark is that is not what we see. We see that it is obviously competition is gonna affect whether you can charge the highest or whether you need to be somewhere a little bit more reasonable. The one thing that I'll say about that though, so that number is an industry benchmark, and a number that we've seen used.
Is it USD dollars?
Yeah, USD dollars. So 175 to 225, that was US dollars. But that number, whatever that conversion is to euro or whatever your local currency is, it should be pretty close, give or take, a few percentage. I think the difference is that you have to feel confident that what you're delivering differentiate yourself, right? That you have a risk-based solution, that you're not just going out there doing what everybody else is doing. And if you're doing something that is absolutely risk-based, that is absolutely unique, and unique is not really hard to do much that anymore. I mean, yes, there's a lot of MSPs in there, but sort of going that extra step, being able to deliver remediation services on your backup, on your IR incidents, those types of things are things that other MSPs, other MSSPs aren't doing. You absolutely can charge, a higher number for those. So, Steph, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So if anyone's not aware, we do have a costing calculator. I talk about it in my pricing security programs bootcamp, and you're able to toggle and put it in your own local currency. Because the theory around pricing, at least what we talk about in the boot camp, it's the same. Doesn't matter where in the world you are. You have to put in your labor costs, right? Like what your labor rate is. You have to put in, how am I defining my advanced security package or whatever you're calling it? What's the tool sets that make up that that advanced package? What are my tool costs for that? You input that. And then what kind of margin, gross margin goal do you have for that program? And best in class MSPs, there, I think, Chris, I always quote in my boot camps, you're finding in the benchmark it's 62%. Service leadership says, north of 50. So like we're saying, 175 to 225, USD, but, put in your own, define your program, put in your own cost, your software cost, your labor cost, your desired margin. Again, best in class is 50 to 60. I've seen 70, 80% gross margin goals. And then that will help you with your pricing. So it's not so much getting stuck on what that number is, but putting in your own so that you know what your market number would be.
Yeah. And there's some good questions.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. Ryan is asking, where do you find the costing calculator?
Let me send it to you because I'm not quite sure where it is on Enable You.
It is in.
I know there's a download.
It's in Enable. Yeah, Enable You or Enable Me. But yeah, it's probably the easiest. Yeah.
Also,
actually, I pulled it down the other day. Oh yeah, Adam said. I sent it to Adam a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you sent it to Adam.
Cool. It's a cool way to just, if you've never done spreadsheet costing before, by the way, that's how I used to run a product team for an MSP. That's how I did all my costing exercises. And I got to the level, I got even more advanced than we did with the costing sheet. But the costing calculator is really, really solid to sort of get your feet wet on.
Good starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. When you start to get into things like, large capital purchases like you're doing in-house, storage as a service and things like that, let me know. And I've got some more advanced stuff that I can share as well. There's some other really good questions in there that I was just sort of peeking at. My buddy Craig, yes, that includes licensing. I'm including licensing in those.
I would include licensing as too. If that's your standard package that you want to have all of your customers on, because really standardization is the name behind pricing. Like you're pricing a standardized package and whatever that looks like for you and for your customers. So yes.
Yeah.
And you made Chris very happy with that. You made Craig very happy with that answer. There's also a question here we haven't had a chance to get to yet, and it is, again, that pricing between U.S. and the UK. In your opinion, do you see a wide variance between pricing in the U.S. and the UK?
I will tell you that my UK partners that are in our benchmark and come to our programs love to fight me on that for sure. They love to say that the numbers that we are using in the United States are just absolutely not possible. What I'll say is the data does not reflect that, though. When we look in the benchmark and we see, where folks are from a net profit perspective and where folks are from an average contact and what their price per device or per user is, it is very close to being in line. The one thing that I'll say about my UK friends is, boy, you guys are right on top of each other. Like I can go into the back parking lot, your back parking lot, and there's a competitor there, and a competitor there. And so I know like the natural instinct is like, well, I got to go rock bottom. I got to have the best pricing. And I'll just tell you from my experiences, having the lowest price is not the best thing, right? You do not want to come in with the lowest price. You want to be somewhere in the middle. And sometimes it's not a bad idea. This is the beauty of sort of building those relationships in the community as well. There's segments and markets you're not going to go after that they will, and there's segments that they'll go after that they won't go after that you will. And so if it's ever possible to build that sort of I like to call it co-opetition between those folks around you, you can start to really bounce ideas off of each other and play a little nicer with each other. So I will tell you, the numbers do not lie, though. The numbers show that the variance is very small. It might be about a 10 to 15% variance, and that really just comes with we're not, you're just naturally not charging the highest.
So is there a variance as well, Chris and Stefanie? Do you see a variance, even locally between, for example, New York and Nebraska?
If there are variants, honestly, I think it's from how they're selling it and how they're positioning it. Yeah, I think the MSPs that are getting it, that are getting those rates, they have just done a better job of building the package, positioning the package, overcoming objections, dealing with the price pushback, and really weaponizing a competitor's lower price against them. So if they're going and presenting, like, again, an advanced security program, and a customer saying, well, I can get it down the street from this guy for $50, $75 a month less, my response would be, I'd be concerned about what's missing. Because especially if you're going after a customer in a regulated market, where there's compliance standards that they have to adhere to. If they're coming in at $75, $80 less, I would be saying I have some concerns of whether you're going to be actually properly protected with what they're offering.
I don't kind of weaponize. There's a few people have been asking about the pricing calculator. So what I'm going to make sure that we do in the follow-up email for everybody who's on today's session, I'll include a link to the, and also Tracy. Calculator.
Yeah, and I can fashion that, because I would also like to send across the recording to how to use the pricing calculator.
Perfect.
I have a boot camp that kind of goes through, do this, do this. I think it will be a good accompaniment to that.
Yeah, the one thing, because she won't say this about herself, but the one thing that Stefanie has done just an absolutely amazing job with over the past, I would say, 6-7 years, has been talking to partners and obviously building tools to be able to help our partners do what it is that they do on a daily basis, which is costing, quoting, selling, marketing. I mean, there's a lot of great sort of pre-built things. And again, it may not give you all the answers, but it should lead you down a path that gets you pretty darn close to where you need to be. And so that's always been the goal of what we do here at Enable is giving you some tips, giving you some tools through things like this, as well as some of these worksheets. So we'll share some of those, and please attend Steph's webinars as well. She does such a great job going through the marketing, the sales, and even some of the pricing stuff as well. But back to this webinar, the one comment that you asked, or the one question you asked, Tracy, was about sort of East Coast versus Central US.
Yeah.
The biggest difference there is your cost of labor, right? A tool cost should be a tool cost. Yes, there's some competition, but there's also more people in New York City than there are in Omaha, Nebraska, right? And so a lot of times that competition is like, I could just go after this one high rise here and I can have enough customers to feed my family for a while. But the biggest thing is that cost of talent. And so there's a couple of things that we always talk about to be able to drive that cost down. Sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes you have just a kick butt technician that you absolutely have to have foundational. He or she is just the perfect person for your org. You've got to figure out a way to be able to price that service properly, but also make that technician sort of across multiple lines, right? Allow him to wear to be involved, he or she to be involved in a couple of different products, so that he isn't just focused on this one service that you're delivering. And then I think the other thing too is think about using either outsource, like in other parts of the country, like Youngstown, Ohio. I live in Youngstown, Ohio. Very affordable to hire an engineer out of Youngstown, Ohio. Do you work well with remote employees, right? Do you work well with having folks that aren't in your four walls? Those are ways to be able to drive those costs down and sort of normalize that percentage. Obviously, your net profit, that's that number that you're driving towards, right? You want to keep that net profit number. A goal is above 18%, right? That's best in class, above 18%. Most MSPs are not even close to that. So you just constantly want to be driving to that. And the way you do that is charge more and reduce your labor costs through automation. Make sure you
implement price increases.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that is one thing that could just make sure you're charging more, and then make sure that you're raising your prices every year. And also I talk about like if you're testing the market every time you put out a new proposal to a new customer. Like if your, gross margin goal was 50%, this time tweak it, 50.5, 51, like just keep raising and pushing that price every single proposal you put out there, just to kind of see what the market will bear. Now, obviously, there's going to come a time when you're going to get pushed back. But if you're able to be comfortable with handling objections and handling pushback, especially around pricing, then try that, so that you're always incrementally trying to raise the bar where it comes in terms of your pricing. So
we're getting some interesting questions here, and we're going to come back to that regional difference. And Denise makes a really interesting point, and she says there's a dramatic difference in how companies do business in the Midwest versus the coast, smaller communities, different perspective, different priorities. And so, how are you guys seeing that play out?
Yeah, I would say in general, that is a pretty accurate statement. I will say that there are there's some unique, there's some MSPs and MSSPs that I've seen that don't fall into that mold. However, matter of fact, there's one, Adam, you'll remember, that was part of our online business and security program that we ran. He's out in Oakland, and one of the things, Oakland, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast. Like I went out to the West Coast and worked for a year, and people were like, "Man, you guys in the East Coast, you just work your butts off, and you always are like you're putting in tons of hours. We have a little bit more relaxed attitude here, and like we're gonna do the job, but this is the line in the sand that we draw, and then we don't go past that." That's a pretty over genericized comment, but anyway, this fellow Christian is the exact opposite. The way that he differentiates himself in Oakland is he says, look, the big guys may offer you the best tool. They may offer you the best person to be able to install that tool. But once that tool detects the problem, they don't do any of the remediation. We do the remediation. We go above and beyond. That's the piece that we're going a bit farther. So yes, I will say that there are definitely different ways that different parts of the United States sort of deliver a service. But we've tried to, at least here at Enable, we've tried to sort of normalize that a little bit by getting different folks from different parts of the country together in a room together and going, okay, let's talk about this. Like we should all be doing this a very similar method and not not shortchanging people if you're in this part or giving away the farm if you're in this part. So I would say, yeah, possibly, but I think that's becoming less of an issue. Steph, any comments to you on that?
Yeah, I was thinking, and it always comes back to ICP, ideal client profile. Yeah. Who are we targeting? And especially if you are a verticalized MSP, then you're not coming at it from a tool sale, and you shouldn't be thinking of it as a tool sale and trying to resell a tool. You need to think about the industry that you're targeting. What are their challenges? What are the business owners dealing with? What are deficiencies that you're seeing that you can help out with? And you speak to that with your package bundle of services. And maybe it helps that I'm a non-technical person, but if you're starting to talk to me about gadgets and widgets and features of this product, I'm going to shut you down. But tell me, how is that product, how is your service going to make me more money, make me more competitive, help control my costs, keep my employees productive? That's what's going to resonate when you speak to me. So yes, there is some validity that if you're a bigger market versus a smaller market, it'll have some impact. But at the end of the day, how are you positioning? How are you speaking to business owners? And are you speaking to business owners in language that's going to resonate and make sense to them? Are you making this relevant to them and their business? Because that's what they care about. They care about their business. They don't care about the tools that you're using.
And that would work regionally as well, right? Because there is a vast difference between the West Coast and the Midwest, right? Yeah. And not, we see it even in Canada as well. There's a difference between, Ontario and Alberta. And so I think that really does reflect that then. And you led in nicely to this question from David that I want to get out on the table here. And what industry or vertical do you find that understands the cost of the service better than any other?
Do you want to bring up slide 11?
Okay.
Yeah. Any industry with regulation requirements, any industry with compliance requirements, right? Yeah.
Anything that would be considered that medium to high risk, and focusing on the high risk column on the right. I've been in the industry, Chris has been in the industry for over 20 years. When I first started, helping partners and MSPs kind of package their services and go to market with their services, managed services was a very intangible concept. I always joke that you don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I got to get to Walmart and get me my managed services. So it was very difficult to really kind of talk about the value of uptime versus downtime. But I think with security now, because it's in the news, it's so prevalent, we're hearing about it day in and day out. I think now MSPs have something to sink their teeth into when they're trying to find the right markets to sell to. And I think nowadays, in my maybe simple mind, it's very cut and dry. If you're dealing with customers that are in a regulated industry, it's advanced security with MDR, SOC, SIM, and everything else that goes into that. That's that $225, $250, $275 a user program that they're seeing. Because if you have customers that are in banking, financial, healthcare, or any of those other regulated industries, they don't have a choice. The compliance isn't an option for them. And whether they want to be compliant or not is not an option on them. So you should be targeting those customers with something like an advanced security program. And that's your bottom line. That's your program. That's what I'm selling. And kind of going back to the standardization approach, because customers, they do not have an option whether they want to be compliant or not. It is just part and parcel of being part of that industry.
Yeah, and I'll just add to this. I mean, one of the things that we're hearing, folks, is the conversation is changing. It's not, hey, do you have multiple layers of security, right? Like, do you understand the layers of security? And this is what we should be delivering. It is more around compliance, right? What is that compliance framework? What is that regulation that you, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, and actually do the slide right before that, Tracy. Yeah. So it's this one, what's that framework that you guys need to be auditable against? All right. And so this is a little bit of a busy slide that I had put together for a program that we ran about a year ago called the Business of Security. And the goal from this is to change the conversation in the room and get folks talking about where do I play today? Am I playing in sort of the lower compliance box, right? This is a 4 box. Those of you that know me know I love the 4 boxes, and point to which box you're in today and where do you want to be. And so it was interesting. We actually had this room of 50 or 60 partners say, like, we're in box 1 down there, bottom left, but we want to be in box 3 up at the top left, right? Like, we want to be in that specialized industry. Like, these are some of our clients, and we want to go after this size, this market. And so we need to think about this in a different fashion. And so to Stefanie's point, if you had a healthcare client, you were absolutely having conversations around HIPAA, around high trust, around NIST, CSF, like you were having to have those conversations. They're having them. And so hopefully you're having those conversations with them to make sure that they understand what risks are, that they have upon them and what regulations they have to adhere to. Something that I just heard, we're preparing for another program that we'll tell you about here at the end of the session. But as I've been doing some prep and talking to folks like Charles Weaver from MSP Alliance, who's working with the U.S. government right now on some of the regulations that they're about ready to push down on folks. There's a company called, or there's a part of the organization called CISA. And CISA is focused all around cybersecurity. And he said that it's the large nation state, like threat actors are not the folks that like they can handle those. It's these small businesses that don't have people telling them, by the way, you are going to be at risk. And so they've identified the managed service providers as an avenue to be able to push regulation down through to these small businesses. So I think it's just a matter of time before you start to see, and he's mentioning sort of a scaled down version of like CSF that may start to get enforced against some manufacturer or some of the managed service providers. So stay tuned for more of that. I guess the point of this plea to you all is, if you are in the security framework and the compliance framework and auditable. Like if you're in that market today, that's great. Keep it up. Keep doing that work. If you aren't even thinking about compliance today and what some of those frameworks and standards should be, please start doing that today, because that is it's right around the corner. And if you don't have customers that are in some of these markets, it's just going to be a matter of time before some of this gets forced down. And we're seeing it in Australia with the essential aid, and the UK has some. So there's the governments are involving themselves in what some of these frameworks should be followed. And so I think it's important for everybody to understand where they fit into these conversations.
And that's also, based on what Chris is saying, that's also a way that you can differentiate your MSP from the MSP that might be, beside you or in your backyard. Because, when I look at, managed service providers, their websites, their marketing material, they're still very generic. They're still we are an MSP delivering managed services. Whereas if, you're involved in any of these markets and you're able to have these level of quality conversations and you're helping your customers with their audits and adhering, improving compliance, talk about that in your marketing messaging, talk about that in your sales messaging, because I tell you, MSPs are not doing that today. So if you can kind of really put that message out in the market in terms of your marketing, in terms of your social media, in terms of, all your thought leadership posts and all that kind of stuff, that's, if I'm a business owner that's looking for a new MSP and I'm looking at this one that says, hi, I'm an MSP delivering managed services, but I go to your website and I see all the things that you're talking about from a compliance and I'm like, oh, that's something that I need that I'm not getting today from my existing MSP. That's the way that you can use it to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, that business conversation's really, really important. It's very powerful. And I know it's hard for some of us that were engineers and then started a business. Like, we want to talk the tech, we want to talk the tools, because that's the cool stuff. That's the stuff we know about.
Try and sell me.
Yeah, having that conversation about why it's important to them and why it, like, what's going to happen if they don't think about this today. And it's not a scare tactic. I know lots of folks that, love well, by the way, here's my friend Julie down the street. This is what happened to her. I've never been a big fan of scare tactics. It's just having that conversation, that smart conversation with your customers, with the owners.
Having a reality check, really.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Like, you're seeing it right now. You're seeing how things can affect industries at a large scale, right? We need to protect our customers from these things.
Yeah. Like, I'm giving a talk for the Taylor Business Group at the end of August, and talking about how to build a cybersecurity business. I can't talk about how to build a cybersecurity business in 45 minutes. So I'm talking about what not to do, and some guidelines, and referencing some of the court cases that are being brought up against MSPs right now. There's one in California, there's one in Maine. And so the whole goal is, you don't want to be a headline, because you getting blamed for one of your customers getting breached, because they think, you're my MSP. What am I paying you for? But if you know that you haven't had that conversation, if there's gaps in terms of what they're paying for versus what they think they're paying for, that's where you have to really get up there and have those conversations and get that tightened up, because you don't want to be the next headline and getting blamed by one of your customers.
Yeah. So we have a question. That's another good segue. Sherman would like to know if we have any kind of security responsibility release form or language, that a customer can sign in case they deny a recommended service, which would, eliminate an MSP help eliminate an MSP becoming a potential headline.
So I don't. I'll give my answer. I don't, because we're a software company.
Right.
We are not a legal company. So that is something that I always encourage MSPs, go work with an attorney that is familiar with the MSP industry, that's familiar with your business, and get them to do something custom for you. Yes, it's an expense. Mm-hmm. It is. But, going to someone and trying to borrow theirs or get a template is not going to work, because you want to make sure that you have proper language in place that's specific to your MSP. So I don't, because again, we're just a software company. The other comment made.
Sorry.
Just
go ahead.
Just let me. hold on. Just the other comment that I have is I actually don't believe in limited liability letters or release of liability letters and getting a customer to sign that. And it's a polarizing statement. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because people's memories are short. If they're telling you that they're not going to subscribe to your recommended services, that they want you to pull some services out because it's too expensive and you're trying to accommodate them, oh, but sign this form, they're going to forget about that form when they get breached. Mm-hmm. And they're going to come back to you and say, why did you not insist that I take your services? Why did you not really let me know that what could happen? So yes, you may have resolved yourself from a liability standpoint, but your reputation is going to get a hit. Like, you're still going to be known as that MSP that allowed their customers to get breached. So I am more of a fan, again, polarizing statement, that if you have a customer that's not going to subscribe to your recommended standard security practice, you walk away. And you say, look, maybe I can refer you to another MSP that doesn't uphold the same cybersecurity standards that I uphold for my business and for my customers. It doesn't look like we're going to be a good fit, and no problem about that. I'll happily transfer you over to someone that doesn't have kind of the same viewpoints that I do. And you'd be amazed at they'll think twice when you say that.
Yeah. So I couldn't echo that anymore. Apologies for stepping on you. No. What Steph is saying is exactly what we believed as an MSP as well. We were a very large MSP. We were about a $60 million MSP, that, about 280 employees. And we just said, this is the product you're going to get. And that product had a base level of security that we were comfortable with, right? It had EDR, it had backup, right? It had patch, it had all the things in there. I don't think it had MDR at the time, but we had this advanced option that we could layer on top of it. But we said, look, you're going to take this minimum option because this is what we're comfortable with. And if they said, well, we don't need this, we don't need this, like, sorry, we're not an a la carte shop. That's not how we're going to handle things. This is the way that we're going to help you. And to Steph's point, and this is hard because you want revenue, right? Like you it's hard to say no to folks, but if they are picking and choosing and saying, sorry, we don't want to pay this, they're not the right customer for you. And if you do take them, you're introducing a large risk. Even if you put some sheet of paper in front of them and have them sign it, not only will they not remember it, it likely won't hold up in court, right? If you were ever taken to court, we did deliver this service. Now, there's another side of that. There is this idea of a shared responsibility, right? When you buy Amazon Web Services, there's a shared responsibility model that you're agreeing to or your customers agreeing to, right? They manage the infrastructure, you manage what's in the infrastructure. So if you ever get to a point where you're saying, well, look, you still have some responsibility, it is A-okay in your MSA or in your T's and C's or whatever you have legal to say, this is the shared responsibility model that you're going to agree to, but it has to be the same for everybody. You don't do it one way for one customer and a different way for another.
And that's
customer.
where working with your legal counsel will help with that. Really because that shared responsibility absolutely could come into play for a co-managed type of relationship, right? Where you don't have 100% full responsibility for the care, protection, maintenance, and management of an employee or of a
So earlier in the session, we started talking a little bit about labor, and Ryan has a really good question here. And he wants to, you saw that, did you, Chris?
Yeah, I did.
Does techs have the basic skill set? So how do they differentiate themselves to fill that talent gap that gives them that security basis that they're looking for? And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit when you started talking about how comfortable are you having people work for you remotely. So let's expand on that a little bit more.
I think that's one of the ways. Again, number one, do you have the energy to build a security offering from the ground up? And security offering, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about managing EDR, managing MDR, providing that, or providing a full-fledged SOC 24/7, 365? There's different levels of that. And so if you just need a security resource to sort of be your point person internally, answer some of the basic questions, put sort of a foundation, a framework together, like almost act as a CISO, yeah, you're going to spend some money for that, but you can get creative and think sort of outside of your four walls. Where can we go? I think the easier way to do this is there a trusted vendor that you can partner with to be able to deliver that offering and have them essentially act as you, right? And so, you get some of that with if like managed EDR, right? SentinelOne, our managed EDR product, they have a team behind. Obviously, the MDR solution, they've got a team behind. So there's some other ways, like if you needed just a full-fledged SOC 24/7, there's obviously some other partners out there, and I've seen MSPs do this pretty successfully. It onshore and offshore as well, right? And so it depends on the level of security and so on.
But Craig has a great follow-up to this.
Yeah.
And I think your answer kind of touched on it. Is why can't MSPs co-manage to other MSPs where a skill set such as security may be missing? I know you guys both have opinions there, so.
Yeah. You can. You should, Craig. Yeah. Matter of fact, I think that's an amazing idea. And if we could ever get to a point where we could get you all in a room together, by the way, we can, then I'm pretty confident that we could go, guys, this is the stuff we're really good at, and we could crush this all day long. And we'd love to be able to take on some of that support. I have seen some MSPs do that successfully here in the States. I don't know any off the top of my head over in the UK where you are, Craig, but I have seen some MSPs do it pretty successfully. They're larger. They built a security team, and so they're willing to go down that path of saying, yeah, we'll just do this for you. But yeah, you guys should. I would love to see that happen. That's a very healthy ecosystem of MSPs. Yeah, especially. Yeah, inside jokes in the chat today. So sorry.
So there's one question that we didn't get to earlier, and was talking about pricing. We moved on to another topic as well. And Adam, who has left, but I still want to answer his question, is what he does in his new contracts, like the ones he's just written up, he includes a 5% yearly pricing increase. So it doesn't have to be addressed through email every year. Is this something that in your opinion, that every MSP should absolutely be doing right out of the gate?
Steph, I'll let you answer this one. I know the answer.
But you put automatic price increases in? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Is that rhetorical?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Your costs go up every year, right? Our costs go up every year. Everybody's costs go up every year. And, we were talking about the talent discussion. You want to keep your top talent. You want to develop top talent. Maybe you want to bring in top talent. Maybe you want to make investments in your MSP. You need to raise your prices on a regular basis across all of your customers and get them into that cadence that there's a regular price increase coming. So yes, absolutely.
And Adam had a number that he puts in there, and the way I've seen MSPs do this, and we did it this way as well, is in our MSA or in our contracts that they were signing, it would say, you are going to get sort of an automatic price increase of 5%, right? With sort of without us telling you, right? Like that was sort of how it was written, a much more elegant legal way. However, if we need to charge you more or increase more, right? Like if Microsoft decides someday to have this giant price increase, Enable would never do that. But if Microsoft tries to do that, then you're going to want to go and obviously react to that. So I think that's one of the ways that we've seen MSPs sort of get around well, if I charge 5 today, what if I need to do 7 or 8 or 10?
Yeah. And I think, and again, that's why for a traditional managed services customer, and I define the traditional managed services customer as, there's no internal IT, so you are their outsourced IT department. That's where selling security in kind of a bundled fashion works really well, because you're deploying the bundle, you're in charge of the bundle, you decide what goes into the bundle. So if you decide that, you need to change up that product mix, or you need to introduce a new product, like I know we keep talking about Enable MDR, putting that in. Because you're doing your automatic price increases, and whether, work with your legal counsel on the wording, but that bundled approach and the automatic price increase, that allows you to make adjustments to that product mix without always having to go get permission. I'm not a fan of you going and asking your customer about, I need to make a change. Do you mind if I do that? And this is going to cost a little bit more. No. with security, we're in a tell, don't sell type of sales model now. If you feel, because you're the experts, you're the security experts, you spend your days being entrenched in the market, in the industry. So you're very close to it, and you can see what the consequence, the ramifications are if you don't have proper security in place. So if you feel that you need to introduce a product, change a product, just do it. Get it in there, get it part of your new bundle, and then your price increase floats out of that.
Yeah, and that goes back to Craig's question earlier about including software in there. The beautiful thing about including software in there, number one, you've got all your costs in one spot. Number two, you increase the cost, or you increase the price by 5%. You're increasing that overall price, and that includes your labor, that includes your software, that includes all those sort of things. So it allows you to sort of kill a couple birds with one stone. The other thing that I don't know if you guys care about right now, but when you get to a point where you're going through an evaluation, you're looking to sell, if you have software separated, a software is a very, very, very low multiple, like very low. So you may have this big Microsoft resell, but when it's bundled inside your managed service, it actually can be included as the managed service. So it's kind of a beautiful thing. And by the way, you can mark it up a lot more, because if you just say like, well, here's the Microsoft price and I'm only getting like 18% discount on it, you can only, because they're going to go out to Microsoft and go, well, why are you charging more than I can get it from Microsoft? Really, really hard. Stick it inside that bundle.
Yeah. Big fan of the bundle. And speaking of UK, there's a UK partner of ours, and I tell this story all the time in my boot camps. They're a small MSP. I think there's 4 or 5 guys, people in their MSP, and they build their security bundle and they version it like cars. And so there's the 2023 security stack, the 2024, 2025, what have you. And he goes, by doing it this way, I can make changes. I don't have to ask permission. I can just get the new product in there, implement the new price increase, and then everybody has to be on the same version. So, this is something that even, smaller MSPs, 4 or 5 individuals, they have been doing successfully out of the gate since they formed their practice 10 years ago. And so there's just so many positives and so many benefits by putting your security stack in terms of a bundle versus, as Chris said, talking about his tool, because you can only do so much on a tool. Tools are commodities, right? And so one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, how do I price MDR, Steph? How do I price EDR? What should I be charging for this? If you're tackling it from a tools perspective, there's very little that you can do from a markup percentage. And again, thinking of who you're talking to, I could care less about your EDR, MDR tool that you're using. So why would I pay, so much more dollars for that, right? But if you're building it as part of your advanced security package and you're telling me, you know what, Steph, we're going to be able to stay on top of this. We're going to be monitoring for abnormal user behavior. We're going to know as soon as something happens, and we're going to be on it so that your data and your employees are staying safe and secure and productive. Sure, sign me up. I pay for that all day long. So again, just really goes from that tool sale, which for the most part, no one cares about, to making it an important part of keeping my business up and running and productive.
Yeah, that's great advice, Steph.
So we're getting down to the last 10 minutes, folks. So if you have questions, you go ahead and get them into the question and answer panel. We'll keep the conversation going, but I just want to give everybody the heads up that we're at 10 minutes to the top of the hour, and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask their questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of the soapbox, if I can go on the soapbox real quick, because there's been
so join me, please.
There's been so many great questions in the chat this session. I'm so glad you all were able to attend and felt comfortable asking the questions. That just shows, Tracy, the group that you built with MarketBuilder. So fantastic. I love the questions, and the types of questions that I've seen come across are so easy to answer in peer groups. And so if you guys have not ever done a peer group with other MSPs, I strongly suggest it. We have peer groups here at Enable that we can get you more information on. But I would just say in general, like things like, hey, do you guys have a forum for sign off, or do you do this sort of thing, or do you have a lawyer that you'd like to go to? Obviously, Stefanie and I want to continue to help you guys as much as we can, but it helps to have MSPs that are like doing the job. Like I did it 3 years ago, but like doing the job today, you can't, it's a invaluable resource to you. So I strongly suggest you put that on your, before the end of the year / into 2025 wish list of things that you're going to do is join a peer group. That will absolutely help catapult you into the next level of your maturity.
Cool. Join a peer group. That's your action from this session today. Join a peer group and email us, text us, whatever, and ask us, how do you join an Enable peer group? So Chris, did you want to talk about any of these videos in the last?
Yeah, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll do this sort of summary here. There is a program that we run called the Business of Security. A few of you have been part of it. Adam was part of it, part of the online version. A couple of you have been here in person. I wanted to grab a few what I call teasers to the conversations that happened during the Business of Security. I actually linked those 3 teaser videos in the chat there. So feel free to take a look at those in YouTube. But really the goal of these is for you to see that these are different types of conversations, right? Like we're hearing partners talk about segmentation. We're hearing these are MSPs that are doing the job today. Some of them really larger. There's Christian, who I mentioned, the really large MSP out in Oakland. He's talking about how he differentiates himself. And then finally, the last one here, Tracy, is Daniel Zaborski, who is an expert in sort of the GRC space. And he talks about ways to identify risk. And one of the really, really interesting comments he said, because he said a lot of MSPs and MSSPs get a little nervous when they sort of veer away from being a technology company and being more of a risk-based company. Now, I think that's shifting pretty drastically in the last 3 to 4 years. I think you've all been talking about risk, and these are the risks to your business. And by the way, we did an assessment at the beginning of us onboarding you, and these are all your gaps, and this is how we're going to help you. But turning these conversations into how you identifying risk and not being afraid to just do your best, I think is a really, really powerful thing. And he even made the comment, he's like, you're never going to get into trouble. You're never going to get into some sort of a slap on the wrist. If you can prove that I've documented all this, these are the things we did. We identified these risks and we went down this path. And maybe it's not the exact way that some other organization would have done it. But if you've got that all documented, it's a really, really powerful way to prove that you've identified risks and you've addressed those. So really, really powerful. And we'll talk more about a session that's coming up here in a minute as well.
So a few questions have come in just as we called for them. Craig has asked if you can mention the new peer groups that Vince is trying to set up here.
Yes.
Craig and his folks are joining, and he has 6 or 7 others.
Yes. Yeah. So and I'll just give a quick recap of the peer groups are enabled peer groups. We use a third party called MSP Advisor to actually moderate these peer groups. And there's a fellow over in the UK. He's a South African living in the UK. That absolutely great resource for our UK partners. And he's getting a group of MSPs together. We're sort of creating that UK peer group. We have 6 or 7 other in the United States as well, both virtual and in person. There is a small cost to those. We can talk more about that. I can get you guys the detail. It does not go to Enable. It goes to the third party that's moderating those for us. But just so you know, we've got some great resources for folks, and happy to get you into one of those if the time is right for you.
So there's a couple of big pricing questions here that we'll use kind of hit for the last couple of minutes, and then we'll move into some announcements that we have. So Bob would like to know, how do you price the 2024 security stack when it includes tools that are both device-based and user-based? And how do you simplify that for selling to the client? This is a big question.
Yeah.
Well,
My answer is, like, if you haven't seen the costing calculator, if you haven't participated in that pricing bootcamp that I give, maybe take a look at that, because it is putting in all of your user costs, putting in, all of your labor on a per device, getting that total, and then dividing it by the number of users. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's really, because the pricing calculator, a lot of it is like a per user price point, like, EDRs on a per desktop, mail assurers on a per user. So putting in all of those software costs, for a desktop, what are you doing from a reactive standpoint, from a preventative maintenance standpoint, how much consulting time we're putting in, and I'm talking really about your QBRs. If you're putting in security training, you're going to put all those costs. So you're going to get your monthly price, and then you divide it by the number of users.
Yep.
So
I was going to echo the same.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I was just going to echo the same thing. It's think of it less as, well, we've got servers, we've got enable licenses that are servers, and Office 365, Microsoft 365, which is users. Put it all into a spreadsheet. How many users is your average, right? And think about it that way. Like, instead of doing it for every single client, what's your average size client? Is it 10 users? Is it 20 users? Is it 50? Figure out what that number is, and then go back and actually figure out what the number really is after the fact, right? How much money are you making from this? And I think that's the key when you need to make some adjustments. Yeah.
And Ian, back to the question around peer groups. Ian is asking, do we reach out to our client manager for peer group info?
Yeah. Yes, or me. Yeah.
Or you can, you can ping me, you can ping Stefanie, you can ping Chris. Any of us are able to help you. So
I'll jump on the phone with you, Ian. I'll get you some more information. No problem. Yeah.
One of the final questions here is a formal gap analysis against a recognized framework is a great entry point to a new client. I'm going to call this the last question because I want to make sure that we have time for you guys to talk about some of the upcoming
boot camp.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you have to do, as part of your pre-sales process, you should be doing a business workflow and a cybersecurity assessment, because you need to find out where are the deficiencies, where are the gaps, where are the holes in that customer's business pertaining to how they're being managed today by their existing MSP. You want all of that data, because that's data you're going to be able to then put into your sales proposal. And when you're trying to close that sale, you'll have this data to kind of go back to you and say, look, it doesn't look like your existing MSP is doing this. These things seem to be missed. This is what you're telling me is important. This is what's what your employees are, what's important to them. This is what we can do for you. And this is how we can close those gaps. So that then helps justify why you might be, $50, $70 a month more, or whatever that price difference is, because you have actual data and conversations that you've had with your prospect that you can kind of use against them. So absolutely. Thanks, Brad. That's a good call out. And I have my net boot camp is taking place on August 14th, and I'm talking about that.
Cool. So everybody who's still on the call, you can use this QR code that's on the screen to get to the registration form for Stefanie's boot camps that she has coming up. And as always, they are on demand in Enable You.
Yeah.
And Chris?
And they're so good, guys. So good. Yeah. And so this is the program that I was referencing earlier, the Business of Security. There's a couple folks that are on the call today that are in that room, in that picture. So thank you for smiling. I couldn't see. This is the back of your heads. But this is a program we ran in Austin last year. We're going to run what we're calling it the Business of Security 2, which is essentially the sequel to this. You do not have to have come to the first one to attend the second one. This is an in-person program in Austin. It will be limited to about 60 or so partners. And we've got about half of that room filled already. So I'm really excited to have a group. And the format is very much a conversational type of a session, almost like fireside chats. Folks will be sitting at different tables of similar sized MSPs. So you'll have conversations that relate instead of you sitting at a table with like a $60 million MSP that's like, yeah. So it'll be really, really great. We'll have a registration ready to go here in the next week or so. So one of the things that I can do to I can give Tracy that, and we can send that out to the folks that came to the program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up our session today. I want to remind everybody there will be a survey that you will receive in your inbox right after this session ends. Please give us a rating, give us your feedback, and let us know if you need any help with MarketBuilder or anything else.
Can I do one more plug, Trace?
Sure.
Can you go to slide 13? So just as a follow-up to everything that we kind of talked about today, slide.
It's getting there. It's slow. Why is it not working? Come on. You can do it.
Tracy needs a new laptop.
So everything that we're talking about today, I've written a selling security playbook. And it is in final. It's available, but marketing is making it look much more prettier and much more professional. But it is around how do you price, how do you sell, how do you go to market, how do you overcome objections, especially the pricing objections. And it takes into account both that traditional managed services customer and that co-managed. So if anybody is interested in getting a copy of that, just put security playbook in the question panel, and I'll get that from Tracy, and we'll make sure that we get that sent out to you.
And it will also be with the rest of the playbooks that Stefanie has written on MarketBuilder in the sales and marketing resources. It'll live there as well, so you'll be able to grab it there, and you can go ahead and I'll let everybody know when it's available for you in MarketBuilder. All right, folks, thank you so much for sticking around a little bit over time. As I said, there will be a quick survey looking for your feedback that you'll get shortly in your inbox. Thank you so much. Our next session will be in September, and we are going to talk about social selling and social media. So see you then, and thank you very, very much to Stefanie and Chris for a really great session today. I enjoyed it so much, and as always, I come away from conversations with you learning lots.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Tracy, for organizing. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Take care.
Bye-bye.